So I was at the grocery store yesterday doing my weekly shopping, and I always bring my AirPods because I like to listen to podcasts or catch up on sports news while I'm walking through the aisles. I had ESPN on my phone and was listening to First Take while picking out produce when I heard them announce that Tom Hanks was joining the show as a special guest, because apparently he's a massive 49ers fan who grew up in the Bay Area and has been following the team his entire life. I literally stopped in the middle of the vegetable section and started watching on my phone, because I couldn't believe they had Tom Hanks on to talk about football. And when the conversation turned to what the 49ers need to do this offseason to close the gap on the Seattle Seahawks, and they started discussing potentially acquiring Dawson Knox from the Buffalo Bills, Tom Hanks got so passionate and thoughtful about the analysis that other shoppers were looking at me weird because I was standing there nodding along to my phone screen. It was one of the most unexpectedly great First Take segments I've ever seen. Hey, what's up everyone? Real quick before we get into everything. That like button is literally what determines if this reaches hundreds or thousands of fans. Takes 1 second, but makes a huge impact on the channel's growth. Just smash that like button right now. It's the easiest thing you can do, but honestly, the biggest way to support this content. Every single like pushes this further, so hit it now. The whole segment started with the First Take panel breaking down John Lynch's press conference from the NFL Combine in Indianapolis. And there was a ton of important information that came out of that interview. The first major topic they addressed was the Trent Williams contract situation, because the All-Pro left tackle has no more guaranteed money left on his deal, and his cap hit for 2026 is nearly $39 million. Stephen A. Smith was explaining that it's not realistic for Williams to come back at that price tag, even though he's still playing at an elite level, and that Adam Schefter had reported the Niners and Williams are at a contract impasse. If they can't reach an agreement on a restructured deal, San Francisco could cut him and make him a free agent, which would be an absolute disaster for a team that desperately needs to improve its offensive line. Tom Hanks was visibly concerned during this part of the segment because he understands how important Trent Williams is to the 49ers offense. He started talking about how he's been a Niners fan since he was a kid growing up in Oakland, and how he's watched this team go through so many ups and downs over the decades. Tom mentioned that the offensive line has been a weakness for San Francisco for years, and that losing Trent Williams would be catastrophic, especially when everyone at the Combine is saying the Niners need to improve up front if they want to catch the Seattle Seahawks, who just dominated in Super Bowl 60. The First Take panel then showed a clip of John Lynch expressing confidence that they can come to an agreement with Williams, saying that he's met with both Trent and his agent Vincent Taylor and had really good, productive, and substantive meetings. Lynch said that Trent loves being a Niner, and they love having him, and that it's up to them to thread the needle and figure out a deal. Tom Hanks seemed relieved to hear this, but also acknowledged that until a deal is actually done, there's reason to be nervous about the situation. The discussion then shifted to the hiring of Raheem Morris as defensive coordinator to replace Robert Saleh, who left to become the head coach of the Tennessee Titans. The analysts were praising this hire because Morris and Kyle Shanahan have been close since the early 2000s, and this will be the 4th time they're working on a coaching staff together. They showed a clip of Lynch saying that Morris brings so much to the table, that he's been in the league a long time and done it at a high level, and that he has variety in the type of defense he can deploy. Lynch also mentioned that Morris is an energy giver, and that any building he's in, you feel that positive energy. Tom Hanks loved hearing about the Raheem Morris hire because he believes the 49ers need that kind of positive energy and adaptability on defense. He talked about how Robert Saleh did an incredible job in 2025 despite all the injuries, and how the defense played amazingly in the wild-card round against the Philadelphia Eagles, who were so much more talented. Tom said that losing Saleh was tough, but that Morris seems like the perfect replacement because of his scheme flexibility and his ability to adjust to different personnel. That's when the First Take panel started discussing what the 49ers need to do offensively to improve. And this is where the conversation got really interesting. The analysts were talking about how San Francisco needs to get faster, younger, and more explosive at wide receiver, and how the receiving core was injured, slow, and couldn't get any separation last year. They mentioned that the Niners were the oldest offensive unit in the NFL and that they need to rebuild that position group through free agency and the draft. Stephen A. Smith brought up the names of potential free agent targets like Rashid Shaheed for speed, Alec Pierce as a dynamic playmaker, and Mike Evans as a veteran who wouldn't break the bank. They also discussed the young receivers already on the roster like Jordan Watkins, who has 4.3 speed, Jacob Cowing, who has been dealing with hamstring issues, and Ricky Pearsall, who needs to stay healthy after dealing with that PCL injury that impacted his entire 2025 season. The panel showed a clip of Lynch hinting that the Niners might be interested in bringing back Deebo Samuel when he said they have opportunities to bring back some former players. Tom Hanks had mixed feelings about the Deebo situation because while he loves what Deebo did for the franchise during his peak years, he agrees that the Niners need to get younger and faster, and that bringing back an aging player whose speed is declining doesn't help accomplish that goal. He mentioned that Deebo hasn't had a 1,000-yard season since 2021 and that the team needs to look forward rather than backward. That's when the conversation took a really interesting turn. And this is where Dawson Knox's name came into the discussion. One of the analysts made the point that while the 49ers are focused on improving at wide receiver, they also need to think about the tight end position and how it fits into Kyle Shanahan's offensive scheme. They mentioned that George Kittle is still one of the best tight ends in football, but that he's getting older and has dealt with injuries throughout his career, and that having a quality tight end to pair with him or spell him would give the offense more weapons and flexibility. Shannon Sharpe started making the case for why Dawson Knox from the Buffalo Bills would be a perfect fit for the 49ers. He described Knox as a productive tight end with consistent experience as a reliable target in the passing game and the ability to create mismatches against linebackers and safeties. Shannon mentioned that Knox combines physical size with sure hands, which makes him an ideal target in the intermediate areas of the field, and especially in the red zone where the 49ers have struggled at times to finish drives. Tom Hanks immediately perked up when they started talking about Knox because he's watched enough football to understand how important the tight end position is in Shanahan's offense. He started talking about how the 49ers have always been at their best when they have multiple weapons in the passing game, and when defenses can't just key on one or two players. Tom mentioned that adding a player like Knox would give Brock Purdy another reliable target and would take some pressure off the wide receivers who struggled to get separation last year. The First Take panel then broke down Knox's specific skill set and how it would translate to the 49ers system. They talked about how his physical presence in the intermediate routes would give the offense a safety valve when the deep shots aren't there, and how his ability to work the middle of the field would complement the outside receivers who stretch the defense vertically. The analysts mentioned that Knox has proven himself in playoff situations with the Bills, which is valuable experience for a team that has championship aspirations. Tom Hanks made a really thoughtful observation about how the 49ers' red zone offense could benefit from having Knox on the roster. He talked about how San Francisco has sometimes struggled to finish drives and convert opportunities inside the 20-yard line, and how having a big physical target who can go up and make contested catches in tight spaces would help solve that problem. Tom mentioned that Knox has the kind of sure hands and body control that you need to make plays in the red zone where there's less room to operate. The discussion then shifted to how Knox would fit alongside George Kittle and whether the 49ers could effectively use two tight ends in their offense. Shannon Sharpe made the point that Shanahan's system is versatile enough to feature multiple tight end sets, and that having both Kittle and Knox on the field at the same time would create matchup nightmares for opposing defenses. He mentioned that teams would have to decide whether to put linebackers or safeties on these guys, and either choice leads to mismatches that the 49ers can exploit. Tom Hanks loved this idea and started talking about how the 49ers have always been creative with their personnel packages and how adding Knox would give Shanahan even more options to play with. He mentioned that the great offenses in NFL history have always had multiple weapons that defenses have to account for, and that the 49ers with Kittle, Knox, Christian McCaffrey, and whatever receivers they add this offseason would be incredibly difficult to defend. The First Take panel also addressed the Brandon Ayuk situation because it's been such a strange and unfortunate storyline this offseason. They showed a clip of John Lynch's face changing when he was asked about Ayuk, and they explained how the Niners voided the guarantees in his contract after being unhappy with how he was approaching things. The analysts mentioned that Ayuk has gone missing and that the Niners haven't heard from him in months, and that the expectation is San Francisco will have to cut him once the new league year begins. Tom Hanks expressed disappointment about the Ayuk situation because he remembers how good that player was when he was at his best, making the All-Pro team in 2023 and developing into one of the top receivers in football. He said it's sad to see a relationship between a team and player deteriorate to the point where there's no communication, and that hopefully Ayuk can get healthy and find success somewhere else. But Tom also acknowledged that the Niners need to move on and focus on building the best roster they can for 2026. The discussion then turned to the electrical substation theory and whether it will impact the Niners' ability to attract free agents. The analysts mentioned the Washington Post report that cited agents voicing concerns about the dangers of EMF from the substation near the practice facility, and how Trey McBride of the Cardinals said during Super Bowl week that he thinks it could impact San Francisco in free agency. They showed a clip of Lynch saying he hopes it doesn't affect them and talking about how the Niners are a tremendous organization with a great place to live and play.